A very good evening to one and all, and welcome to the 18th episode of PGC Weekly Podcast series that we started in the month of May. We have come so far. I'm your host, Saurabh, Kaura, and I'm a Coursework officer on the Postgraduate Council. The Postgraduate Council is a student body that is representing, supporting, and advocating for all the postgraduate students. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to us. I would like to start the podcast series by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples, the traditional custodians of the lands where each of our UNSW campuses are located, and all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present, and emerging, as well as their communities who have shared and practiced their teachings over thousands of years. We recognize the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's ongoing leadership and contributions, including to business, education, and industry. In today's podcast, we have a very special guest joining us to talk about employability-related queries, which most of the students at UNSW might have. So we have got Dave George from the UNSW Careers team joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Saurabh. I know it's been a little bit to get this teed up, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. To start off with today's podcast, Dave, I would love to ask you, and if you can throw some light on the different employability events which are lined up now in the rest of the term for students, postgraduate, and probably some of the undergrads might also be listening to you. So what are the different employability events now lined up for students?
Yeah, happy to. So we've just come out of this week. There's been a combined event, which has been the Launch Your Career in Life and Health Sciences. That's been in collaboration with the Science and Medicine faculties for their Careers in Science Week, which has just been a lot, actually. And it's quite interesting that the student feedback that we've actually got from that event is, with so much going on and so much in the way of studies going on, that there's probably an argument that there was maybe a bit too much actually crammed into the week. But that effectively was a week, comprised of employer information sessions, alumni panels, embedded our careers team, the Next Step program, and then on top of that, kind of a bit of a, I think, soft networking situation, but I'll get to the larger networking side of that as we go on. What we've actually really got coming up would be the 3rd of November. It's something that I must admit, before the most recent and enduring lockdown, we were really hoping for this event to be back on campus, actually making use of our alumni lawn and roundhouse. So you can imagine this was going to be quite a large event. But we're running a High Achievers Networking Day. So this is a networking day that's going to be all day long, running across 2 sectors at a time. So we're looking at commerce and technology, we're looking at education and government, we're looking at life and health sciences, and then general sciences, and then creative industries, and then kind of the legal services law area as well. It's quite a situation that I'll get to, and I'm sure we'll get to in the direction that UNSW employability is heading, but this is actually more of an exclusive event. So it's by invitation. It's already been sent out to students. There will be a few more students that have completed our Life and Health Sciences week this week that will receive invitations, but effectively we were looking for students that have either been award and prize winners or students that have been significantly participating in events to actually increase their employability or show a readiness that they're at this level to start going out there and networking. So that's the 3rd. Immediately after that, we have another event, which is a quickfire event for creative industries. So again, that's just a shorter version as such of what we've had with Life and Health Sciences, just running on the 4th and 5th. So that'll be, again, alumni panels, opportunities to engage directly with industry and really just kind of understand the inner workings for the creative industry sector. So that's what we're looking at to carry us through to the end of the year at this point. But effectively, these adjustments that we've made, particularly around that networking event and the sense of exclusivity that's going to be involved with it, has really come in response to what we've heard from both employers and industry. So that may give you a bit of a hint. And again, we can talk about it more, the kind of direction we're heading for 2022.
Yep. A lot of students who might be listening to you right now, Dave, would also be interested to know what kind of resources the careers team is providing so that they can make the best utilization of those events that you have listed down?
Yeah, so this is probably going to take a while, but look, before clarifying, it may just be appropriate for me to explain kind of UNSW Careers, which actually fits within UNSW employability. I'm sure, as everyone knows, there's been quite a few structural changes that's happened, not only for UNSW, but all around all universities and really industry just generally with COVID and everything that's gone on. So within UNSW employability, there's effectively 3 teams that are working directly with students. So there's my team, which is the student development and co-curricular team, the Will Central team, that they're working on in-curriculum experiential learning opportunities, work integrated learning programs, etc. And then the actual careers team made up of the professional career consultants, resource developers, effectively everything that you could imagine in kind of that standard careers fair. So from us, from the student development and co-curricular, we're out there offering a range of professional and personal development programs. They're tied to this employability roadmap that we're implementing. So this is currently being worked as the Discover, Launch, Grow roadmap. And it's just really an idea of students being able to identify where they are in their career journey and making sure that we're not really looking at students anymore as, just undergraduate or postgraduate or penultimate year. And rather we're focusing on where an individual may be at within their career journey. Maybe they've come back after a sustained time out there in the workforce, and for us to kind of be putting them back in at that very fundamental level, we know that's actually just not really targeting that student the right way. So it's moving as much as we can away from a one size fits all approach. Obviously there's got to be some generalization in there. So I guess when we talk about what we're doing within student development co-curricular, we're trying to really develop those engaging skill development experiential programs that are relatable, try and be inclusive and relevant to the classroom or other experiential learning opportunities, and realistically for the students' future careers. So I guess effectively what we're trying to do is have students value and invest in their personal and professional development. So lifelong learning in a sense. So within us, we offer a number of programs. There's the Career Discovery Mentoring Program that we work with the careers team. There is the Professional Development Program. We will handle the facilitation of Interchange and Univative, which are external programs that UNSW students feed into. And then in the past, I guess this is a fun time to announce this, that we did have the Hero program, which I think has had a lot of good feedback, but over the years, there's been some sense and also really relevant feedback from students about kind of a nature of stagnation in the program and what we can do with it. So earlier this year, we've had a new staff member, Nick, come on board. He's had a really comprehensive review of the program. And, for that reason, we weren't able to run it in term 3 of 2021. So the nice news here is effectively the Hero program as it existed is simultaneously no more and coming back. So what we will have working title right now is effectively the Innovation Learning Platform or Innovation Learning Program. And that's going to be responding really to what we've heard from students, more kind of asynchronous modules up front, getting some of our industry partners to kind of come and give a bit of pre-recorded material so that there's a little sense that the intensity that was there in the program isn't overwhelming, but that we still continue with face-to-face workshops, chances to deal directly with industry and look at long-term industry mentoring opportunities as well through that. What we're trying to do with all of that is that effectively we will be establishing, if you can think of it as the UNSW Hero framework. So when we're thinking employability hero, we're thinking someone that has taken part in the Leadership Foundation program that members of my team, Olivia and Andrew, run, which is just fantastic as a kind of developmental discovery program. They've taken part in that. They've got involved with the UNSW Club or Society. They've got involved with some level of volunteering. And then they've shown that they've got an interest in kind of developing that entrepreneurial or innovative mindset. And then they've gone on and done what was kind of the former Hero program. And that's something, I mean, for me personally, where I want to go with that is a level of kind of digital badging plus additional recognition. But we'll see where we get with that. That's kind of a longer term work in progress. So that's kind of what's on offer from my side and resources from my side. From the Will team, look, you've got courses that are done for credit towards a degree program, or courses that are done for program accreditation. So the WIL team, they've got a really wide range of partners and really are communicating with industry both here in Australia and abroad. So if you do go to the wil.unsw.edu site or .au site, you can find courses that are going to be relevant to your specific faculty. And then within WIL Central, there are courses such as the CDEV 3000, which is the Practice of Work Gen Ed course. So, something like CDEV, what we're hoping to achieve there is that students are just getting that direct exposure to real world problems, and then through multidisciplinary thinking, they're developing a more flexible approach to life and work, while also improving that kind of critical thinking, analysis, teamwork skills that you can imagine out of it. It's something that sits very much to the side of what we're doing. And I think over time, there's been this push to really differentiate, going back to the former HERO program, of where we are in co-curricular experiential learning, and then students that really distinctly want kind of the in-curriculum, very kind of hard, this is distinctly WIL course. So we've got that team. And then we have the careers team, and the careers team are running career coaching sessions. And look, we could spend a full half hour just talking about the resources they've got, if I'm honest, but they're covering everything from like your general career planning to fine tuning your resumes, to distinctly helping out PhD candidates, as well as working with programs with us, so things like that career discovery mentoring program. They've just developed a huge amount of resources that they keep adding to and updating progressively as they can. So trying to think of kind of a couple of the key ones would be kind of like the career essentials. So the maximizing your career outcomes, starting a new job checklist, working safely in Australia, and pretty regularly updating the internal UNSW International Student Employability Guide. Look, again, realistically, I could try and probably name every single resource, but honestly, there's a lot on offer, and a good deal of the work ahead is just actually about making sure that our teams collectively, so the co-curricular, the careers and the WIL team, are spending more time actually on identifying situations where, I guess really what we're looking for is where students need our intervention to improve their employability, and therefore through that, they feel more confident in their employment outcomes. So that's probably I'll stop talking now because I could go into resources, but I think that's probably the best way for me to give a clear overview of what's immediately on hand. One thing I will add, sorry, I know I just promised to stop talking. We will be working our best that before the end of this year, and realistically, it'll probably be pretty close to university shutdown, that will actually broadcast out a very clear calendar of what we're intending to do next year. So key dates, alongside the academic calendar, having key dates where we're showing where we're hoping for this new Innovator Pro to sit, where the professional development programs will sit, where Leadership Foundation, term long and intensive programs will be, just right. So for every student, they can have a quick look at that list and go, okay, this is going to align with my work and study schedule. Or if they're in a trimester where they're taking a reduced load, they may go, okay, I've got time to work this.
One thing, I want to know, you can always list down those resources, Dave, and I would be happy if you can share the link with me so that I can reshare it in the comment section with the students, where we have those list of resources that can also be publicized through PGC.
Yeah, sure.
Would you also like to highlight on some specific events for domestic and international students? Because international students might be interested to know their specific events, and in general, the domestic students might also want to know what kind of events will be beneficial to them. So do you have any such specific events for them?
Yeah, so we've been looking at this pretty closely for the better part of a year, to be honest. What we have done is we have partnered with an external provider to ensure that we've actually got some events that are focused more on international jobs. So our first kind of pilot with this is offering, and this has been specifically to students we've identified with working rights in Hong Kong, to look at what we've got in terms of international opportunities, taking it away from just looking at what's available in Sydney and broadcasting what's available in Sydney. So seeing what we can do to align this with countries across the world. It's kind of early days yet, but I'd imagine that we're going to work towards a regular series where hopefully we see, maybe something like 5 to 6 countries per year. We're putting out these distinct opportunities. And of course, it's going to be down to that variability of whether this is going to be an event where we can talk about distinct working rights, or whether we can talk about this being an event where this is about, okay, you've got an interest in working in, Hong Kong, you've got an interest in working in, mainland China, you've got an interest in working in India, you've got an interest in working in the United States. Seeing what we can do with that. So that's one area that we've been looking towards. Event-wise, there was in the past a kind of a global employability week. That for this year obviously hasn't happened. One of the things that we're looking at within the Launch Your Career series is how we actually better integrate opportunities and clearly outline when there's going to be, for example, an international student-facing event or opportunity, and how we actually better highlight that. So rather than make them specific events, go more in the direction of making clear signposting happening. One of the I suppose wins we've had recently is actually listening to what we've heard from international students, which has been a deal of frustration, and even the UNSW subreddit. So yes, I do check this, and other staff members do. So keep that in mind. There are channels that we will check out and get a pulse on what students are saying. And funnily enough, it just came up again, I think very recently, on international students talking about situations where they've gone through a hiring process. Maybe they've been shortlisted, they're through the application process, and then like during a screening interview, they're like, oh, what's your visa status? And I can get the frustration on that. Like I've lived abroad myself. I've lived in a situation where, visa status comes into play. And while there's certain limitations on what the university can do, and our role within employment in general, and particularly when we look at a post-study situation, one thing that we can do is within our jobs board, the UNSW Connect jobs board, is ask employers to start self-identifying. So that's where we're going with, is effectively saying to employers, look, if this job is available to everyone, you're including international students in this. It's something where the opportunity is made, explicitly available to everyone, or if it's something where you are saying you really want, citizen status, for example, we want you to flag that, so that very simply, any given student can just go in and go, okay, look, I'm just going to filter out these jobs because, I don't want to experience that level of disappointment. Just because, again, it is frustrating. So yeah, while it's not going to entirely resolve the problem, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Future-wise, I guess we have been talking about this and how we actually model our events for next year. Right now, this Launch Your Careers series, it's really the first year it was being done. I think there was a lot more hope from us, quite honestly, as staff members, that we were going to have more time on campus this year. And evidently it's been disappointing. I mean, I think for me to disclose, right before we went into the most recent lockdown, I was down in the law library and with a lot of my staff just doing a planning day with the UNSW Employability Unit. And, we'd gone through and done all of the COVID safe precautions, and we're like, okay, we're getting ready for this. And again, as I mentioned, the November 3 event, really hoping that we'd have something nice and in person and, out in the open air, so we could have a bit more kind of safety and compliance, but still have a decent number of people there. Just hasn't eventuated. So within that Launch Your Career series, we are looking at how we can both do an element of sector-specific engagement, which we're finding is working quite well for both employers and students. There's definitely some fine-tuning in the weeks that needs to be done, but also where we can go to a level of identification, and whether that may need to be looking at jobs that are abroad and international, whether that's looking at potentially one of the areas that has come up before, and I think is a direction I personally want to go, is identifying things that are more your shorter term contract jobs or startup and scale ups that may be a bit more flexible in their hiring process. So I can't give you a definitive answer yet, but yeah, that's definitely a watch this space kind of factor.
Yeah, we have definitely missed on to these in-person events, and I am, becoming the voice of those lot of students, who also feel, how COVID-19 has somehow changed the situation, changed the dynamics of how you interact with the employers in those virtual fairs organized by UNSW Careers team. So probably, it will be very helpful if you can share some insights, because we have also been part of Heroes program and other kinds of program where we learn about these elements of small talk or an elevator pitch, or simply how to interact with the employers so that you can narrate your story in front of them. So would you like to highlight briefly on that part as well, Dave?
Yeah, I think I can just do a bit, a couple of sentences. I think there is a nature of trying to really put your best self forward, and that doesn't have to be a highly groomed, highly professional individual. I think, appropriate attire is important, but there's a level of carrying the right sense of positivity. Definitely body language in the virtual space, I can find to be quite important. I'll give you a classic example. So there's my phone here, and in the middle of, say, a team meeting or something like that, the team's messages will be going off on the phone. And if I'm sitting here doing this, it's evident, and there's a level of disengagement that's happening. And while dual monitor setups or situations where maybe the eye level of the camera throws it off a little bit, I do think it's just really important that you do think about your body language and how you're actually communicating with the potential employers. The other one, which I think has come up, and you really do see it, is just engaging in active listening. Honestly, just really actively listening to what the employer has to say. And when I do say the employer, I do mean both the person and the industry. So really understanding that there are times where you can have a speed networking meeting, and it may be eight minutes long, and you may realize 5 minutes in, this is not the job for me, or it doesn't align to my values and my purpose. And there's a very different feeling in going to that person and going, okay, this doesn't align to me, I'm done, I'm just going to sign out and walk away. Or taking those, additional couple of minutes to maybe go to them and go, look, I don't think this is the right kind of direction for me, but I wanted to, hear from you, like what incentivized you to be a part of that career? What gets you excited about your job? What's keeping you there? We definitely see in different characteristics and different people. I mean, I'm someone where I'm quite comfortable moving careers or doing kind of pivots every couple of years. I found that something that resonates with me. I want a level of expertise, but I also like being challenged in new environments. And then you see people that are maybe 20 years or 25 years in the one industry or in the one organization even. And just having a sense of understanding who that person is and really trying to understand that even if it is a 5 minute or 8 minute chat, you can still make that personal connection. And maybe that's not going to serve in, okay, here's my job, here's my next employment opportunity. But down the track, maybe you're looking at something in, let's just say, the finance sector, and you're talking with someone from Combank, and maybe you're never going to connect there, and maybe you're never going to work within Combank, but then you're going to go back and, you'll end up maybe in some sense of like a fintech startup or something like that. And just having the ability to connect with that person on LinkedIn and then maybe go back to them in 3 months' time and go, hey, look, I've just got a foothold in, this young fintech. I'd really like to hear just from your perspective, like what the risk appetite is there right now for like new programs, new platforms. And I just want to talk and connect with you. You never know where those kind of conversations are actually going to lead to. So I'd say that's just a really big one. Like I actually can't emphasize it enough. Just really trying to understand the perspective of the employer. And look, there is also a reality in there that sometimes employers will jump onto these networking events and they're just having a bad day. Like they're a really busy person and maybe they're not really engaging with you. And sometimes you do have to reflect on that and ask, okay, have I not put my best foot forward, or does this person think I'm not serious? But sometimes they're just having a bad day. And it's worth you sometimes just following up all the same and going, look, maybe we didn't connect 100%, but I'd still like to stay in touch because I'm genuinely interested about your industry or how you've ended up where you are. So that's kind of a few of the little things I'd say. Probably the only one I would add is that when you're interacting with employers during these sessions, just being upfront as well. Like, if there is a situation where you're like, I don't think you need to start with a spiel of like super quick, elevator pitch about yourself. But if you are there and you're just like, look, I just want to understand more about your industry, or if you're like, hey, little opener, and then go, look, I'm currently actively job seeking. I'm 9 months off graduation and I haven't got something locked down yet. I think there is a level of making sure that in those shorter periods, you do show a good level of transparency about your goals. Even if it doesn't align to that particular person, that doesn't mean you need to disengage from the chat, but it does show that, you've come there with intent. And I think that intent is important.
Awesome, Dave. Also, in continuation to the points that you just raised, we can also emphasize on this key value of networking. I've already been touch basing upon this in sessions at PGC and other places as well. And also the fact that how important it is for you to take part in events like UNSW Heroes program, professional development program, interchange program. I've been a part of all these programs, so I know what kind of value you can try to create, and a lot of other students have benefited from them. So would you like to also highlight on the importance of professional personal networking that you get through participating in these programs, as well as being a part of different clubs and societies?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think it's really important to say this. Like, obviously, you've been in terms of our co-curricular journey, you've probably been a model student. I can think of a few other model students that have appeared over the years. Vinti, who I know you know, and I believe you've had on the podcast, is another example of just someone who's really put everything into their time and effort and involvement. But I think there's just something really worth acknowledging, which is that's a model that's worked for you. And we really want to make it clear that what we're offering is definitely not one size fits all. So there are going to be certain students where something in the former Hero program, so now this innovation program, it's not going to align for them. It's not going to be what's going to work for them. There's going to be other students that maybe they're very early in their career journey, but they want to look at something like the Leadership Foundations program. And once they kind of build into that, maybe they go, okay, look, that's given me a sense of my values, my skills, and my purpose. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to spend some time with maybe, CSE SOC or, BITSA or, women in consulting. And that's where they're going to develop themselves. But one of the elements that I would say just is absolutely identical across all these programs is that you are engaging without even thinking about it. You are actually engaging in building a professional network right now. You will still be communicating. And even for me, I still am communicating on a professional sense with people from my high school, people from my university, where these are the people that I didn't just, attend classes with. These were the people that I was playing squash with, that I was involved in the Japanese and Korean Society up at UQ with. So these are the people that over time you're going to have these connections, and they're not all going to be fruitful in an employment or direct employment outcome or direct business partnership outcome. But all of those are going to share the one common goal, which is it's going to improve your networking skills. It's going to improve your ability to get out there, put yourself forward, talk about, again, I know that this would resonate with you and anyone else that's been involved with Heroes, but your own personal sticky information, something that really is just going to let you stay in their mind. When they can think of that person, they can just think of a couple of identifying factors, and that's something that just holds with them. So I think it's really important to emphasize to all students, kind of take on board what you are comfortable taking on board. Ultimately, your academic development and your kind of success overall is actually what we care about. And I do find, just doing a callback to social media in general, I do find it always a little bit interesting that there's sometimes a perception from some, and I'm going to say this is a very small proportion of students, that we as staff members want to see you fail, or we want to see you, not succeed in a course and then therefore more fees and all that. I mean, I can tell you from the employability perspective and from my pillars perspective, that's the last thing we want. Like, realistically, if there's you as a person struggling or, academically or within your personal or professional development, that tells us realistically that we need to be thinking about what we're doing in our jobs and what we're contributing. Now, there's a reality that there are, more than 60,000 students, and our touch point per year, probably across what we're doing, is hitting, 8,250 students kind of on average. That's where we're hitting. We would love to get out to another 50,000 odd, but we also know that, again, what we have on offer is not going to be what works for everyone. So I'd just say to anyone out there, if you are connecting with people within your social backgrounds, whether that's social sport, whether that's, clubs and societies, whether that's within a co-curricular program, whether that's going and doing something like UNSW Founders or a Will Central program where you've got a multidisciplinary element to it, absolutely take those opportunities and take it on board that the people around you, maybe you don't connect with them very well at the time. Maybe you don't see eye to eye with them in that very moment, but you're establishing a network that you're going to have to carry with you through life. And you just never know where that network goes, and you do see it. I mean, in practical terms, I can say that I used to travel quite a lot for work. And as much as yesterday, I had a colleague that I haven't seen in 3 years from Korea reach out, and we always had a really positive business relationship. So when they've asked for my help, I've been more than happy to give it. And, that's just going to carry throughout your life. And the sooner you can start and get comfortable with those networking opportunities, the better off you're going to be.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to touch base upon this fact, Dave, that sometimes, it's not about the resources or it's not about the events. You have listed down a lot of resources, but I've also encountered some students who come to me and say that we are not able to prioritize our work. There are a lot of things going on in the university at the same time. We have academics, we have extracurriculars, and then in extracurriculars also, we have different kinds of activities going on. Now, which activity is of our preference? And some students really struggle in managing their time as well as prioritizing what is correct for them. So would you like to also highlight on this fact, or probably because you have been guiding so many students as a mentor through UNSW Heroes program and other programs. So any tip for them?
I'd say that this is something that we've identified as an issue as well. And this kind of goes back to some of the work my boss and my boss's boss have been doing within the Discover, Launch, Grow road mapping, is that we really want to get to a point where we're discovering, where students are actually at and where their confidence is at, where their readiness to go out and directly network with employers is at. If we've got students that are still at that discovery phase, so they're really learning about the skills, the knowledge and attributes that apply to them in the career they want, we want to be identifying, okay, maybe something like the Career Discovery Mentoring Program or Leadership Foundations is appropriate for you. If they're maybe establishing themselves and they're starting to get a level of confidence about, say, if they're an international student just joining the Australian workforce, then we want to be saying, okay, maybe you're going to be more appropriate filtering yourself and finding time for something like the PDP program. Or if they're kind of towards more of that end of the journey and they're like, okay, I feel ready for going out there and getting a grad role and starting to get ready for the whole application assessment center process, putting them towards things like the Next Step program or the former Hero program, and putting that forward and saying, okay, this is the top end of launch, and this is really about making sure that you're ready to get out there and feel very confident that you have either secured work or you are next to securing work. Grow, of course, being more about feeding back into that system, opportunities to provide professional development, peer mentoring opportunities, and really kind of filtering back into the university, probably more applicable for the postgraduate space or those that have come through AGSM at a later date, and see what they can do to kind of help the next generation, which of course, especially early career, you'll see some companies, off the top of my head, Salesforce is one that I would know. They do actually focus as a part of their early development journey for their staff members, that I believe it's kind of by the time they've done 2 years in the career that there's really an expectation on them that they start taking mentoring opportunities. So I guess very quickly, what I would say is that, again, there's not a one size fits all. What we are aiming for with this in this roadmap is that we can actually go out there and say to students, okay, if you feel you're at this level, we suggest these programs, we suggest this involvement. If you feel that your limitation is a fundamental kind of need to understand the context of the Australian workforce, then kind of if you've got time for doing that as a co-curricular, PDP, if you want to do that in curriculum, maybe look at a gen ed within, say CDEV 3000. So that's kind of the direction we want to go in. I don't think there's any one program that we could say to a student, no, prioritize this over that. But we want to just lay it out for students and say, okay, have a clear idea of where you want to go, and that way we can guide you. For those that really are lost in that journey, I would say the first place to start is to book an appointment with one of the career coaches. So just get them and go, look, I feel like maybe I'm day one of my career journey, and this is where I need to start again. And career coaches have dealt with this before. I think a lot of the time people do think of the career coaches as more of on the other end, where it's like, okay, I'm ready for this grad role, or I've got an assessment center coming up and I really want to practice, for that assessment center, but they're absolutely there to help at the start as well. And from there, we can talk about building out that kind of discovery journey for any individual. There is a level that would love to get in, which is around intervention for students. But that's something that we are working with the larger team overall. And that's more around the idea that maybe at the start of term, we would just have a single, like a 3-question survey going out to every single student being like, okay, where are you at? How confident do you feel about the sector you want to work in? Have you already secured a role? Our team would love to do this just because that would be a really simple intervention strategy where, if there's a confidence interval there where we can say, oh, okay, these are students that are maybe 2 years into their program as an undergraduate and they're still not feeling any confidence at all, that tells us maybe we need to be directly mailing these students and going, have you booked in a career coaching session? Do you want to share your timetable with us so that we can talk about where maybe we can fit in a development opportunity, whether something short, sharp and sweet like the Leadership Foundation Intensive works better for you, or whether a kind of like longer term 6-8 week commitment like the Innovator Pro and Former Hero program would work for you as well. So that's again where we want to go. It's definitely not where we're at yet, but that's where we're aiming for.
I think career mentoring is a great idea, Dave, because I was about to come to that point itself, because some of the students are not in a position to say that I'm at this level or I'm at this level or I'm at this level. They in fact want to identify which level they are at, because they might misinterpret which level they are currently at. So for that itself, they might require a career mentor. And that's where those career mentors really come handy. And I think that's a good advice that you've given, that at least if you're not able to figure out where you are, you can approach the team members and try to figure out which stage you are currently at. We have talked a lot about university resources, Dave. Probably would love to know, what other resources can the students tap onto? Because we know that Sydney is home to a lot of businesses, a lot of business opportunities. Sometimes we're just looking within the university. We don't want to tap anything outside the university because we are completely reliant on opportunities coming through the university. Do you also want to highlight on what's the importance of networking, not only within the university, but also beyond that as well?
Yeah, look, I guess it's interesting. And I guess this pulls back to really clearly defining, again, employability and employment. If we're talking employability and working on resources that are about employability, so understanding employability as like a combination of knowledge, so both disciplinary and interdisciplinary, your skills, so technical transferable experiences, which we would be curricular and co-curricular, and then attributes, personal and professional. You can think that outside of the university space, all of those things apply, and then, experiences, they kind of think experiences in the workspace. But look, there's the general resources. Sorry, bit of cat hair. There's the general resources. So that would be, plenty that's online, plenty in terms of engagement. There's LinkedIn Learning, I think, in terms of platform wise, I really like. I think there's actually an enormous sense of information out there on YouTube. I think, it's very easy to take the internet for granted. I'm probably showing my age here, but, I was someone that kind of grew up with the dawn of the internet, and, just having this resource always available where, if you take a genuine interest in something, I think you can find times where you laugh about it, but, there may be a certain specific thing that you're like, okay, I want to understand that better. And just going into it, you've got so much time, and if you can find the energy for it, just actually developing right in that space and just understanding those resources are available to you online. But within the space of Sydney, I think there's a few things to look at. There is the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, which is a collaborative effort that UNSW is involved in. There are startup hubs around Sydney. So you've got things like Stone and Chalk, you've got things like Haymarket HQ that are talking to specific areas. Those startups do tend to offer quite a few independent events, or they'll do networking nights, or just even it can be like kind of like a workspace walkthrough. And that can be really useful in just better understanding what's going on in that space. So if that's something that's of appeal to an individual student, I'd definitely say once we're almost back to, well, I don't think we can call it normal, but we're back in a space where we can start interacting with people outside of our general social circle. I think as safe to do so, it's kind of good to see those kind of opportunities. Study New South Wales is interesting. So study.sydney. In the past, a lot of what they've been doing has been focused specifically on international students and developing resources in that space. But the nature of the interchange program does actually go across multiple universities, and in the past was international student only. And they've actually opened that up, recognizing that it's something that really works for domestic students as well. So making use of programs like that, I'd say those are the ones I would say have kind of come immediately top of mind for me. The other one, which is just a really straightforward one, is making sure whatever work you're doing, if you are doing any sense of work that is interacting with other people, whether they are your clients, your customers, your co-workers, making sure you're thinking about the skills that you're developing there and how you can apply them in a sense, whether that is a technical skill that you can apply elsewhere or a transferable skill. In the past, what we've referred to as soft skills, but I tend to be someone that sits more with the Simon Sinek kind of way of thinking of actually referring to those more as human skills, because realistically, they are the skills that we do transfer kind of workplace to workplace. But those are just kind of the immediate top of mind. Any of those kind of larger scale events, you can see this. City of Sydney will put on events as well. Get out there and find things that are genuinely interesting to you. You can find entry-level industry events. There's certain summits. One that I personally was a fan of was going to the EduTech conferences. So kind of the trade floor of the EduTech conference is completely free to enter. You just have to register. Of course, you can pay and kind of go to a higher-end seminars or things more than quick-fire meetings. In the past, I've been personally a member of the International Education Association of Australia, given my background and where my career focus is. But looking into professional networks that are operating in Sydney, you will find that there are networks that you can onboard that aren't going to have a membership fee, or it may be something that may just be paid to access a single event, but at a quite a small rate. But definitely getting to a sense where you can actually find those, identify those that are interesting to you, and getting out there and getting involved.
Yep. And I think these are the events which are not only for job seekers, but sometimes as an entrepreneur, if you want to go for those pitch nights where you need to pitch your startup ideas, you can become a part of any of these events in Fishburners or one of those you just listed out. So to wrap up with this session, probably, do you have any final tips for students? If you have to list down top 2 or 3 tips coming out of this session for students who might have joined us late on Facebook Live.
Look, okay, so I'll say right now, this will be my personal tips and not, this is now me taking off any kind of UNSW badging and hat. This is 100% my personal opinion. Look, probably tip number 1 that I would personally go towards is understanding in the hiring phase, we know that especially from the shortlisting to interview to acceptance stage, that a lot of people are going to fall out in that stage. And I would really emphasize the human element. So this is, again, if anyone who hasn't been involved with this, looking up Alison Black or Marion Farrelly on LinkedIn and the work they do. Aaron Nan is another person who will talk to this, but making sure that you are memorable in the right way. Ultimately, if you're in front of a hiring panel and you're interviewing for a role, yes, there's all of the questions, the standard interview questions that you've got to think of. But on top of that, there's a very real question in anyone, and I've been on panels, I've been through plenty of hiring processes. That's at the back of any employer's mind, which is this person an organizational fit? And that can be a reality that can be down to, can I imagine being in the same room or being on Teams frequently with this person for 38 to 40 hours a week, every single week? And if the answer is no, you are not getting that job. So I would just say, it's really important to think on that, on how you're actually going to interact, how you're going to present yourself, and make sure that you are actually communicating on a really human level with that person. Tip number 2, I think, comes back to something that I've had to refocus myself quite recently on, which is to really know your strengths, know your values, and know what your purpose in the career sense is. And I would say this does change. This changes every couple of years. And I think you always have to be willing to ask yourself this, maybe kind of like once every year or every 18 months. But there are certain people, and I think just on the flip side to what we've both just talked about in the startup space, I think right now what we see as a bit of a popular element is this kind of hustle culture appearing more and more. And look, if your values and your strengths and your purpose do not align to working for a side hustle or working towards hustle culture, that's totally fine. Like, acknowledge that and work with that and be like, look, maybe I am someone that is more comfortable in kind of the small cog in a great machine kind of workspace. There are people that it's going to align for, and there are going to be people that it does not align for at all. But one of the areas that I think we find ourselves tripping over is that we don't spend enough time on that. Like, again, I really have to give props to members of my team, Olivia and Andrew. We also had a former team member, Mick, who's left the university, but they're really good at this within the Leadership Foundation space. And while that may be one specific context, I think a lot of what they're talking about does speak to a larger sense of self, in just asking yourself those questions, identifying who you want to be in the employment sense. And, I think a lot of people talk about trying to be 100% authentic in the workspace. And I personally don't find that's possible. I'm quite an introverted person. So getting out there and getting in front of crowds of people has not always been an exciting situation for me, but it's also something I've done for the last 8 years of my career on a regular basis. But when I do go out and put that version of myself forward, I have to make sure that is the version of myself that I value, that I am going to go out and I'm going to act in an ethical fashion. And that's something that I hold very dear to myself when it comes to my sense of purpose. And I know if I betray that purpose, quite simply, I'm not going to perform well in a role. And I think when you're actually out there in that job hunting phase, when people can pick up that you're not kind of bringing who you are to the situation, they can identify it. So I think that's just something to really keep in mind. There are plenty of tools out there to look at that and kind of self-assessment. Obviously, as I said, within Leadership Foundations, we offer our own way to talk about that, but absolutely within the career coaches, you can talk about that as well, and kind of identifying that sense of self and identifying what workplace, organizational structure, or just your values, whether you're going to look at diving for kind of like highest graduate, starting wage, or whether you're going to go, look, I want a career that emphasizes maybe sustainability and personal ethics over immediate big bucks. Those are actually really important questions, and they do actually in the end really come out when you're interviewing. Like, you can identify it quite quickly. Probably the final one that I'd say, and again, I have to preface this again, this is 100% just my personal opinion, is that there's just no harm in being kind to yourself. Like, you are going to face in any job hunting process, rejection after rejection after rejection. I think in terms of sticky information, I think it may have actually been your hero program, Saurabh, that I used to have a 100% hit rate for job interview to job offer. And I was someone that I felt that was really good because it showed where I could really connect with potential employers. I no longer have that hit rate. I've gone out there and put myself out there and experienced it on that side. But beyond that, that's been one specific element of the job hunting process. Within the failed to be shortlisting, the getting it to a brick wall where you ask for feedback and you hear nothing, the sending out and slightly tweaking, 200 versions of the same resume. I've been there on that element. And I think it's easy to sense a level of frustration and exhaustion with that. And, even when you have to turn down a really good candidate for a job, I try and find time when we can to really talk about it. And sometimes it can be really painful because all you can say to that candidate is, look, you were a great candidate, but there was just someone that was better fitting on the day who presented themselves a little bit better on the day, and therefore the hiring committee went that direction. So I think it's just really important that when you're out there finding jobs, when you're applying, yes, there is a need to question, hey, am I doing this the right way? Am I approaching it the right way? Am I, characterizing and deciding, okay, is my resume concise enough? Do I need a cover letter for this or not? Have I responded to the selection criteria efficiently? There's all of those kind of questions that need to linger, but there's an overarching need to just still be kind to yourself, because there's just a reality here. You will face rejection after rejection after rejection. That is the hiring process. It sucks, but it absolutely is. And absolutely, you know, what we want to be doing within the employability space as well is just making sure that one of the elements that we're building more into these programs, definitely on our side, and that is a reason why, as I mentioned, we are now student development and co-curricular, in the past just being called co-curricular, is to talk about building in resilience, because it's just so necessary. But on one side of building resilience is also showing kindness to yourself when you need.
Yep. I think, thank you so much, Dave. You have touched base upon so many great points. And one of the points that really mattered a lot was related to the time management and how the students can prioritize all those things, you know, all those resources that you have pointed out, because this has also been a very tough period for students in terms of affecting their mental health and well-being, which kind of comes through different factors, you know, and career and job employment opportunities is definitely one of the dominant factors that also affects your physical and mental health and well-being. So that's something, you know, this session might really help the students to get insights into. And also, if any of you who have joined us late, you can look back into this session. And if you have got any kind of queries, you can point us to PGC or directly to Dave, or you can direct us through us, and we can point your, get your answers from Dave as soon as possible. But on behalf of the entire PGC team, I would like to thank you, Dave, for taking a lot of your time today and answering all those questions quite patiently, as patient as you ever are, I know. And I hope to see you sometime again, if not with me, because I'll be graduating in November, but with the next PGC team, guiding the students in the next year as well in 2022. And I hope to help the international students, domestic students, even after I graduate. So that's something which I've been doing this year also. I want to continue doing next year as well. So thank you so much, Dave. Any final comments before we wrap up for this session?
Oh, look, just it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me along and having a chance to chat. Absolutely, in what you're saying there, you know, maybe our chances to connect in the campus space are done, but I think there's a reality that we want to have as much kind of commitment and have this be a longer term relationship between ourselves and our students, where, you know, hopefully you're coming back and you are joining alumni panels and you are joining us in a sense where, you know, there is still that ongoing contribution and allowing you as a person to have that professional development, have that sense of, okay, here's me now out in the professional space, you know, mentoring to students that are looking, you know, at that phase where they need to know what, you know, graduation plus 1 year, graduation plus 2 years was like, and how I coped with it. So I think it's just really relevant to what we're talking about here, that, you know, obviously best of luck with as you kind of ending the uni career, but I really do hope that we do have those opportunities to invite you back as one of our alum guests for our UNSW employability panels. Otherwise, same thing. I'd like to think that our team are very accessible. You can reach us general inquiries through employability@unsw.edu.au. You can just look us up or look myself up directly on Teams if you need to shoot through a message. I'm not always going to respond, you know, as a priority, but, you know, if there is something that does come to mind, we do try and make sure that we can actually get to every single student query. Otherwise, yeah, thanks. Really appreciate being here, and take care, stay safe.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great evening ahead.